Hello, everyone. Today is February 2nd, 2022, and thank you all for joining the Reliability Demand Response Resource Bidding Enhancement meeting. My name is Brenda Corona, and here with the Stakeholder Engagement Group at the California ISO. I will be facilitating today's meeting, and I'm also joined by Anya Gilbert and Danielle Tavel from the Policy Development Group at the California ISO. I have a few meeting reminders to share with you that this presentation and all related materials can be found on the Stakeholders Initiative page under Reliability Demand Response Resource Bidding Enhancement. I have other meeting reminders that this call is being recorded and the video file will be posted publicly available on the ISO Stakeholder Initiative webpage. The recording and any related transcripts should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. These calls are structured to stimulate dialogue and engage different perspectives and keep comments brief, professional, and respectful. We will pause for questions after each agenda item, or you may also raise your hand by using the virtual raise hand icon above your chat window. Or if you join audio, you will have to press #2 on your device. If you do need any technical assistance during the meeting, please send a chat to our event producer, and please remember to state your name and affiliation first before making a comment. You may also send a chat to all panelists to review any comments. Next slide, please. Our agenda today will discuss the following topics with Anya Gilbert with initiative bifurcation, as well as track 1, track 2, differences between what they're going to go through, and then EIN governing body role. And then lastly, we have an additional QA session with next steps. And now I will go ahead and hand it off to Anya Gilbert for the following first topic. Anya?
Great. We can move to the next slide. Thank you, Brenda, and good afternoon, everyone. I will flag where we are in the stakeholder process. We are moving forward with a bifurcated initiative, so we are both at the draft final proposal stage as well as the revised draw proposal stage of the initiative. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And one more slide forward. So as I mentioned, we have bifurcated the RDR Bidding Enhancements initiative to accommodate varying policy and implementation timelines. Track 1 is at the draft final proposal stage and is seeking to align RDR bidding rules with real-time price conditions consistent with FERC Order 831. We are planning on taking this to the CAISO board in March and targeting implementation for summer 2022. Track 2 is at the second revised draw proposal stage and will involve adjusting the discrete RDRR's operating range in real time to reflect its operational capabilities, as well as an enhancement to increase the discrete RDR megawatt cap from 50 megawatts to 100 megawatts. Based on current progress, this may be able to go to the May 2022 board meeting with an implementation timeline yet to be determined. I'll pause here if there are any questions.
All right, just a reminder to our audience that if you wish to ask a question, you can type it in the chat and direct it to all panelists, or you can use the raise hand icon located in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Excuse me, top right-hand corner of the chat window. That'll put you in the question queue, and then please just state your name and question.
All right, not seeing questions.
I do not see any questions in the verbal queue at this time.
All right, let's turn it over to Danielle Tavel to address track 1 more in depth. Go ahead, Danielle.
Awesome, thanks, Anya. Good afternoon, everyone. We can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. And one more. Great, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and consideration on this initiative. And thanks to Anya for introducing this topic at a high level. I've got 4 slides I want to get through today, and then I'm going to pause for questions and or comments. So With that, I'll start off by touching on a bit of background related to the FERC order itself before diving into the proposal specific to real-time RDRRs. And I know for some of you this may seem very repetitive, but I like to start with background to make sure everyone's on the same page regardless of how closely they've been following the initiative. So back in 2016, FERC issued Order 831 that raised the energy bid cap from $1,000 per megawatt hour to $2,000 per megawatt hour, and generally required suppliers that submit bids above $1,000 to base those bids on verifiable costs. Additionally, the order required that ISOs verify the costs underlying these cost-based bids above $1,000 per megawatt hour before a bid can be used to calculate energy prices. Back in September of 2019, the CAISO made a compliance filing, and building on this filing, the CAISO took on an initiative to comply with this FERC order. Through an intense stakeholder process, the CAISO developed multiple tariff revisions and system updates to comply and accommodate bidding flexibility above $1,000. These changes and updates were approved by FERC in February of 2021 and then implemented this past June. So if we move to the next slide, we'll dive into more details related to RDRRs specifically under the 831 paradigm. So currently, RDRRs in the real-time market are treated as emergency resources and are required to submit bids at or above 95% of the soft energy bid cap, or $950 per megawatt hour. And keep in mind here that in the real time, RDRRs are released for dispatch only when an EEA2 notice is issued. Under the FERC 831 policy that we implemented this past summer, the bid cap is raised from $1,000 to $2,000 only during periods when either of the following conditions exist. Either there's a submitted and cross-verified bid from a resource-specific resource greater than 1,000, or we have a CAISO calculated maximum allowable import bid price that's greater than 1,000. And that import bid price is really designed to estimate the prevailing bilateral energy prices outside of the CAISO. So right now, when the bid cap is raised to $2,000 per megawatt hour, RDRR bids are still capped at $1,000 unless they submit a reference level change adjustment request before the market opens. And this is based on the Order 831 compliance filing we made back in September of 2019, where we proposed that RDRRs would maintain their bidding structure by bidding at least 95% of the soft bid cap, even if the conditions I mentioned above on this slide are met to raise the bid cap to 2,000. Although FERC did accept this proposal in compliance with Order 831, scheduling coordinators lack guidance on how to justify above cap bids when RDRRs are supposed to be real-time resources of last resort, dispatched when the CAISO has exhausted all other economic bids. Moreover, based on the RDR impacts during the summer 2020 events, we became concerned that dispatching RDRRs based on lower bids could actually lead to real-time price suppression. So this initiative seeks to explore solutions to resolve stakeholder concerns, maintain compliance with FERC Order 831, as well as be consistent with the terms of the CPUC settlement. Let's move on to the next slide, where we'll get into more specifics of the proposal. Thank you. So in the revised straw proposal, the last iteration, we proposed to require RDRRs to bid at least 95% of the hard energy bid cap, or $1,900, when the conditions are satisfied to raise the bid cap to $2,000. And generally, stakeholders supported this revised straw proposal and also supported the proposal for cyber implementation to automatically adjust the submitted RDRR bids based on the change in energy bid cap by maintaining the percentage of the bid cap originally submitted by the SC. However, we did receive one comment in opposition coming from the Department of Market Monitoring. The DMM mentioned that RDRRs should be allowed to bid anywhere between 95% of the soft energy bid cap all the way up to 2,000 when the bid cap is raised to 2,000. This approach, they said, would promote an efficient market outcome as RDRRs would not be required to bid above their marginal cost. And I'll note that we do acknowledge the concern that the proposal currently may not accurately reflect the marginal cost of the RDRRs. However, our intention with the proposal was to maintain the design of RDRRs in the market, as well as stay consistent with the terms of the CPUC settlement and compliance with FERC Order 831. Further, this proposal reflects the need to uniquely position these resources in the market in response to an energy bid cap increase in order to provide appropriate scarcity pricing signals to the market when they are conditionally released for dispatch during those emergency real-time conditions. Further, we heard from PG&E, Shell Energy, and CLECA, who all expressed support for the proposal with some requests for clarification. Both PG&E and Shell requested that we confirm that the proposal, including cyber implementation, is fully compliant with FERC requirements, as well as existing tariffs related to FERC Order 831. And in response to this, I'll reiterate that our intent with this initiative really seeks to maintain compliance with 831 and be consistent with the CPUC settlement. So I hope that helps provide some clarity there. And for CLECA, they requested a couple things. They wanted the CAISO to clarify first, when the bid cap is revised downward from 2,000 to 1,000, RDRR bids are not dispatched prior to non-RDRR bids. And I'll note here that it should be in very, very rare instances that the bid cap is lowered in the real-time market. And at that point, when it is lowered, any non-RDRR bids submitted above 1,000 will be invalidated and will need to be resubmitted at or below $1,000. The second clarification CLECA requested the CAISO to make was to clarify that RDRR bids are dispatched after economic PDRs or proxy demand resources. And for this, I'll note that we believe this proposal supports the intent for real-time market RDRRs to be dispatched after non-RDRR energy bids when that emergency notice is issued indicating system emergency conditions. Now, there may be scenarios when RDRRs are dispatched prior to other resources, including PDRs, but this would only occur if CAISO operators exceptionally dispatch an RDRR, likely in the event of a contingency or a local reliability issue. And our final comment from stakeholders was from the Western Power Trading Forum, or WPTF. They supported the proposal, however, did raise concern that the proposal may be characterized in a manner that could introduce some FERC risk, since it doesn't include a methodology to cost verify RDRR bids in the real time. And looking back on this further, internally we discussed this and we do support recharacterizing the proposal and have gone ahead and changed the proposal to be aligning RDRR bidding rules with real-time price conditions consistent with FERC Order 831. So I think that addresses all of the stakeholder comments. And based on the positive stakeholder feedback, we are continuing to propose three things. First, the existing bidding structure for RDRRs in the real-time market when the bid cap is 1,000 will remain the same as it is today, so that they'll be required to bid at least 95% of 1,000 or $950. And two, we're continuing to propose that in real time, when the bid cap is raised to 2,000, we'll be requiring RDRRs to bid at least 95% of the hard bid cap without additional cost justification support. And finally, we're maintaining our proposal to utilize the cyber application to automatically adjust the submitted RDRR bids by maintaining the percentage of the bid cap originally submitted by the SC. And this automatic adjustment will occur after the market close and would only apply if the scheduling coordinator doesn't take action to revise their bids by the close of each hour's real-time market. And we believe that this proposal balances a few things. First, the proposal is consistent with the intent of the RDRR settlement and the CAISO's RDRR design, which dispatches RDRRs under emergency conditions with little supply remaining. Without enabling these resources to bid close to the hard energy bid cap, RDRRs may actually suppress real-time prices during scarcity events, which would interfere with the economic signal the CAISO would otherwise send to supply. Additionally, we believe this proposal alleviates some previous stakeholder concerns that there's not enough time for scheduling coordinators to revise their bids to reflect the change in energy bid cap. Excuse me. With the cyber implementation proposal to automatically adjust real-time RDRR bids, we think that will resolve those stakeholder concerns and also ensure that our intent is there so that no real-time market RDRR energy bids are intended to be dispatched ahead of non-RDRRs, which may have higher bid prices. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide in this section, and I'll run through a quick example, and then I'll pause for questions. Great. So let's assume that the conditions to raise the energy bid cap from to $2,000 in the day ahead have not been met. But in the real-time market, for example, hour ending 17, there has been a resource-specific resource that submitted a cost-verified energy bid greater than 1,000. This occurs at hour 1400. This acts as a trigger for the energy bid cap to rise from 1,000 to 2,000 in hour ending 17, even though the other condition, the calculated maximum import bid price, was not greater than 1,000. A scheduling coordinator has already submitted an RDRR bid at 97% of the soft energy bid cap for the real-time market hour ending 17. Based on the change in bid cap, the SC now has until 1445, or the close of the real-time market hour ending 17, to resubmit their RDRR bid to be at least 95% of 2,000. Let's say, for example, if the SC takes no action or is unable to take action to resubmit their bid, then Cyber will automatically adjust their bid to be 97% of the hard energy bid cap, or in this case, 1940. I hope this is a helpful example to walk folks through the timing and the Cyber implementation. All right, that was a lot of information, so I'm going to pause here before I hand it over to Anya to discuss the other pieces of the initiative. So operator, let's see if there's any questions or feedback.
And just a reminder to direct chat questions to all panelists via the drop-down menu, or to use the raise hand icon located in the top right of the chat window to enter the verbal queue. All right, and I do not see any questions in the verbal queue at this time.
Great, then I think we can move on. I'll pass it to Anya. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Danielle. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And we can move to the next slide one more time. Thank you. So track 2 includes 2 enhancements. The first is adjusting the operating range of discrete RDRs to reflect their operational abilities in real time to solve infeasible dispatch issues. Similarly to Danielle, I'm going to touch on the background to ensure anyone new to the initiative can stay informed. So RDRs currently can be moved up and down between their bid and a P-min of 0, which from a utility program perspective looks like the program is turning on and off, which creates challenges for IOUs and their customers enrolled. Whereas from the CAISO perspective, this is a feasible market outcome. The slide here is intended to present the state of the world today, in which RDRs can be dispatched either continuously or non-continuously in real time. The scenario looks at a 15-minute dispatchable RDRR with a Pmax of 10, a Pmin of 0, a shaped bid curve, and a daily max runtime of 5 hours. And to orient you to the graph, the gray bars represent the resource's upper economic limit or bid. The orange bars represent the committed day-ahead quantity, which for the sake of our example, we do not have a day-ahead award. And the blue bar shows the real-time dispatch quantity. The figure on the left shows a scenario where the resource is continuously dispatched in real time from hour ending 17 through hour ending 21, whereas the figure on the right shows an equally feasible scenario in which the resource is not continuously dispatched from hour ending 16 to 20. As I mentioned, from a market perspective, moving a resource between its P-min and the upper economic limit is feasible and a solution that occurs today. And this is because from the market perspective, a resource with a 0 P-min and 0 commitment costs are considered online even at 0, unless it's at 0 for the entire period. But again, from a retail program perspective, we have heard feedback that RDRs once started must stay on and cannot be moved between their P-min if it's 0 and upper economic limit and back down. Next slide. So today, with a $0 megawatt minimum load cost, RDR appears free and results in this infeasible dispatch scenario. This wasn't as material of an issue when RDRs were mostly exceptionally dispatched, but with the move in summer enhancements to have these resources increasingly dispatched by the market, this also results in a scenario in which this issue could arise more often and pose increased challenges for stakeholders. CAISO in this initiative first sought to fix the real-time infeasible RDR dispatch issue by examining if there were minimum load costs that could reflect RDR's actual costs to reach minimum load. CLICA, in their comments, urged CAISO to focus on the infeasible dispatch issue, and CAISO agrees with that pivot for a few reasons. The RDR settlement outlines in Appendix A that RDR isn't price responsive, but is economically dispatched once triggered. In addition, the retail tariffs that underpin RDRR, such as the base interruptible program, do not incorporate the concept of minimum load, only a single load level that must be reached, which those programs refer to as the firm service level. And in other words, RDR does not have an actual P-min, but in this proposal, we are trying to capture its operational capabilities of either being fully on or off. Let's move to the next slide. So as a result, the CAISO is continuing to propose to fix the infeasible dispatch issue in the optimization for discrete RDRR resources by setting the P-min to a value just below the upper economic limit using existing P-min re-rate functionality. We would then add the value of the product of the bid price and the economic limit to the existing minimum load cost in order for the market to commit discrete RDRR when RDRR is activated, like a generator with a non-zero P-min. This also enables the resource to be pre-qualified for bid cost recovery, but this only pertains to 5-minute and 15-minute RDRR in terms of eligibility for BCR. I'll note that while we receive comments from SCE to extend this functionality to continuous resources in the day ahead in real time, CAISO believes that these resources that elect to register as continuous must be able to operate in a continuous manner, and we are not planning on extending the functionality to those resources. However, as you'll see in the next enhancement, by increasing the cap for discrete RDRR resources, we are hopeful that the resources currently registered as continuous due to the discrete cap will be able to better reflect their operational capabilities by registering as discrete in order to utilize this functionality. In addition, in response to PG&E's concerns regarding extending this functionality to other resources on the basis of gaming concerns, the CAISO does want to highlight that there are not any other efforts to extend this functionality to other resources. The other category of comments we received regarding this was related to price formation. I recognize that this is an issue that was raised by GDS verbally at our last stakeholder meeting and a question raised by Shell in comments. I do want to clarify that instead of resources being able to set the price from their PMIN of 0 to PMAX of 50, they would only be able to set the price from their re-rated PMIN to upper economic limit. And in this enhancement, the CAISO is prioritizing reflecting RDR's operational abilities. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. We provided this example in our last stakeholder meeting and also in the paper, but this example highlights how this enhancement would work. Again, we're looking at a resource with a Pmax of 10, a Pmin of 0, with a max runtime of 5 hours that is 15-minute dispatchable. If the resource doesn't have a day-ahead award, a discrete resource's Pmin would be re-rated below their upper economic limit, and the minimum load cost would be a product of their bid price of $9.50 and their upper economic limit of 6 megawatts. Again, to orient stakeholders to the graph, the gray bar represents the available quantity or their upper economic limit. And as you can see, even though the resource has a Pmax of 10, their bid quantity is shaped. Again, we have the orange bars, and for the sake of this example, we're assuming this resource doesn't have a day-ahead schedule, so those orange bars are all at 0. The yellow bar represents the re-rate of the PMIN just below the upper economic limit, and the blue bar represents what the resource is dispatched at in real time. It's hard to see the variation graphically, so we have the table below to highlight the difference with the PMIN and the upper economic limit. And as you can see from our ending 18 to 21, the resource is moved up and down between its re-rated PMIN to its upper economic limit, but from the resource operator's perspective, the change should be immaterial. And really, I'm focused on the real-time dispatch quantity row that alternates between 5.9 to 6 and is shaped based on the resource's bids. And with that, I'll pause here for questions. Operator, are there any questions?
We do not have any in the queue at this time.
All right, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And one more slide forward. All right, thank you. So the second enhancement is focused on representing RDRR to the market, and we're proposing increasing the RDR cap to 100 megawatts, which is a change from the revised draft proposal, which maintained the previous 50 megawatt cap. And again, to provide background to stakeholders, there are 2 ways that RDRR is able to register today. That's either as continuous or discrete, depending on their abilities. When a RDRR registers as continuous, it indicates that the resource can operate anywhere between its PMIN and PMAX based on the cleared bid quantity, and there is no cap on the continuous RDRR registration. Discrete registration for RDRR indicates that the resource has 1 bid segment, and when dispatched will generate to its PMAX. There is a 50 megawatt cap on discrete RDRR. Stakeholders in response to the revised draft proposal, including FedNet, CLECA, Enchanted Rock, and SCE, all requested that the CAISO either increase or remove the 50 megawatt cap for discrete RDRR registration. Some of the rationale provided was either that RDRRs operate together in one sublap, but due to the 50 megawatt cap are forced to be represented separately, or that there are resources that are larger than 50 megawatts that cannot be safely split due to safety or operational reasons. Let's move to the next slide. So in looking at this issue in isolation, the CAISO had challenges with an increase to the cap for a few reasons. First, the discrete to continuous treatment of RDRR in the pricing versus scheduling run, where discrete resources are treated as continuous in the pricing run and discrete in the scheduling run, which means that while the market may need to dispatch a resource at 5 megawatts and what it sees available in the pricing run is 5 megawatts, in the scheduling run, it would dispatch 50 megawatts. In aggregate, this can create an imbalance that would then need to be absorbed in the CAISO system through ASA regulation. And the second issue was related to pricing issues. When a discrete resource sets the price in the pricing run, it will generally set a higher price than the price that the final most expensive continuous resource dispatched in the scheduling run would have set. And that final continuous resource may have the incentive to deviate from ISO's dispatch. Next slide. So that was the CAISO's prior rationale. However, the imbalance issue identified as a challenge with increasing the cap is mitigated if the PMIN re-rate functionality is implemented. And that's because the PMIN re-rate changes what the pricing run sees as available and largely eliminates the imbalance between the pricing and scheduling run. So for example, if we have a 50 megawatt RDRR resource, without that PMIN re-rate functionality, if we look at what the pricing run sees, they may see that 50 megawatt resource as continuous between 0 and 50. It may pick up 5 megawatts. In the scheduling run, it will be forced to dispatch 50 megawatts, resulting in a potential imbalance of 45 megawatts. Without the PMIN, with the PMIN re-rate functionality, the pricing run sees the resource as operating continuously, but with the PMIN re-rate. So operating from 49.9 megawatts to 50 megawatts, the pricing run may pick up 49.9 megawatts in the pricing run. The scheduling run would dispatch 50 megawatts, producing a potential imbalance of 0.1 megawatts. Next slide. So in light of the PMIN re-rate functionality mitigating the discrete to continuous imbalance, the CAISO is proposing to double the cap by increasing it to 100 megawatts, and the increase to the cap is conditional on the PMIN re-rate functionality being implemented. Additionally, discrete RDRR resources in excess of 100 megawatts may apply annually for master file registration exceptions to the cap. And in developing applicability rules, we are extending this as an option for resources from a single load source that cannot be operationally or safely split. And in developing criteria, we want to understand what the source of load curtailment is. While this increase in the cap may not be extended for flexible resources like batteries, it would be for process load that cannot be safely split. And I'll note that additional criteria may also be developed based on stakeholder feedback. So again, I'll pause here for questions either on the discrete registration option or the Infeasible Dispatch PMIN re-rate functionality. Operator, are there any questions?
I do not see any questions in the queue at this time, so just a reminder to use the raise hand icon if you wish to ask a verbal question, or direct them in the chat to all panelists. All right, and I did not see any questions in the verbal queue at this time.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. And one more forward. So the EIN governing body role in this initiative is a joint authority role. We are proposing 2 changes to RDRR related to the options for bidding RDRR in the real-time market and related to the representation of RDRR. Because an EIM balancing authority area may use the RDRR model, assuming they have approval from their local regulatory authority and meet the requirements of RDRR participation, this does meet the joint authority criteria. I'll note we did receive comments from PG&E on the inconsistency with our BPM, and I'll note that we do plan to update the BPM language in the implementation phase. Stakeholders are encouraged to submit responses to the EIM classification of this initiative in their written comments, and we can move to the next slide. With that, I'll turn it over to Brenda to review some of the next steps. I can actually take this. Go ahead and move to the next slide. I'll note that for track 1, related to FERC Order 831, we are aiming for a March Board of Governors meeting, whereas track 2 will be on a longer policy timeline and is aiming for a May Board of Governors meeting. Next slide. And I'll turn it back over to you, Brenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Anya. So I would go ahead to the next slide, please.
On my screen, we are on the last slide.
Okay. So before we close today's call, I want to bring everyone's attention to the publishing of California's ISO's first ever 20-year transmission outlook document. This document was also outlined the long-term infrastructure needs and also to help enable and accelerate the integration of new renewable resources onto the grid. You can find this information on the California ISO website and click on Planning and then Transmission Planning. This was just posted for the 2021-2022 Transmission Plan, and this meeting will also be held with topics on Monday, February 7th next week, and you can also see more information on the ISO calendar. I would like to thank everyone for joining us on this call today, as this was recorded and will be available for you very soon. I also encourage all stakeholders to submit comments for the draft final proposal and the second revised draft proposal for this initiative by February 16th, 2022, and the link here is shown below. Thanks, everyone, and I appreciate everyone's time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our webinar. Thank you for using Event Services, and you may now disconnect.